Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are back for another episode of the Buckeye Roast. It's your boy Ron James here with my guy Terry T. Terry, how you doing?
Hey man, it's a beautiful morning, man. Having a good day so far. How you feeling today?
Pretty good. It absolutely feels good to be a Buckeye. My Steelers did not lose this weekend, and the Buckeyes got a win in a top five matchup that, I would be lying if I told you I was not stressed going into it. But the Buckeyes handle business and get a victory in Happy Valley 20-13 over Penn State. Terry, I just want to start, at the beginning of this game because it wasn't pretty to start. The Buckeyes come out with what feels like, after in hindsight, felt like a dominant victory. But watching that first drive and seeing Penn State drive down the field the way and look the way they looked on the first drive, and then for the Buckeyes to follow that up with a pick six, I tweeted the "I'm done" gif and jumped out of the window. And then 5 minutes later, I'm following it up with the tweet of the car turning around. I said, I'm on my way to a bridge, but I'm on my way back. I just heard the touchdown call and I'm coming back. And from that moment of the Buckeyes turning the ball over and then scoring the following drive, it felt like they marched down that field so confidently that from that point on, I was on the couch with my feet up under a blanket. Like I had no more worries. Like normally when the Buckeyes are in a tough game, I'm sitting up like I'm playing the game. Like I got to be locked in. But after they scored, it felt like the Buckeyes remembered who they were and went out there and handled business. How did you handle the start of that game?
Honestly, I wasn't too worried about it, man. Like when the pick six happened, I kind of laughed. I'm like, okay, like you got that out of the way. Now we got to lock in. And then once we got the ball back, I was a little bit worried because I'm watching. I'm like, if something goes bad right here, this game could get out of hand, and like we may not be able to come back and win it. But sure enough, man, they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. Once that happened, I'm like, okay, now it's a ball game. Now, I knew our defense was going to be fine. Especially, I watched the first drive from Penn State. They drove down the field, but basically the entire drive was just Drew Aller running the ball down the field. I'm like, that's not going to work all game. Like, you're not going to just keep doing that. So, yeah, I wasn't too worried about it, man.
Before we continue into the game, I do want to get to some housekeeping. A big shout out to our guy, Stephen Cherry, first one in the chat with the Go Bugs. Shout out to you. A shout out to our guy, Charles Green, a member. I know he's in the chat here somewhere. And good morning to Posh. A happy Monday to everybody. I know all the Buckeye fans out there needed that type of win because it felt like coming into this game, the stakes were higher than they've ever been in the Ryan Day era with this team and this fan base. It felt like for the first time the Buckeyes were almost at the brink with Ryan Day, and he comes in with not the prettiest win, but a great win, it felt like, because even while it felt like the things that they struggled with were so correctable that the Buckeyes were a few mistakes away from this being a dominant win where it had the fan base feeling like a top five team. I wanted to ask you, before the Buckeyes started to really assert themselves in the game, and I want to ask everybody in the chat, what level was your panic meter at before that first touchdown by the Buckeyes?
Yeah, it was so early in the game. Like I said, I wasn't panicking too much. I just knew, like I said before, that if they made like one more mistake early in that game, then it was going to get real scary. But I never really panicked, dude. It was so early in the game. I kind of just laughed and started cracking jokes about Will Howard and stuff, and stuff like that. But I have confidence in him, dude. So I kind of figured that it was going to be all right. They just need to get their feet under them, get the crowd kind of to quiet down, and they will be all right.
Not the prettiest game from Will Howard, but he still finds a way to get it done. It felt like most of the year we've talked about, man, we saw Will's experience. He's never been rattled. It felt like the homecoming might have got to Will just a little bit, and it took him a while to settle in. But even in those jitters, it didn't seem like the team ever wavered. Were you surprised? It feels like it kind of showed how how much this game meant to Will, because I mean he seemed less phased by the crowd in Oregon and playing the top, number one team in the country than he did playing back home.
Yeah, I mean, like the homecoming game, you know what I mean? Like, you think about how Drew Aller looked last year when he was in the shoe. That was kind of like that kind of homecoming game for him too. I could definitely see that being some added pressure. But I mean, to Will Howard's credit, like I know you said he didn't play his best game, but also I feel like he played like a tough, gritty game. And I feel like that's what I want this team to be, anyways. Like we already know this team's not going to be CJ Stroud's Ohio State, where we're about to go bombs overhead. And why, what was it? The quote that was, I don't know if it was Mel Tucker or the dude at Maryland, but he said it felt like the wide receivers were being dropped out of planes. Like I think it was the dude at Maryland. But we know that that's not what this team is going to be, man. So for you to just gut it out and give me like a good performance where you make some mistakes, but you also make some plays, that's this Ohio State team, man.
You talk about the toughness. I mean, you heard Urban Meyer come out before the game and say that the Buckeyes need to run the quarterback. You see Will Howard with 12 carries in this game. I heard a lot of people asking over under 10 carries, and a lot of people were putting it right at 6-7. Were you surprised how much Will carried the ball in this game and how tough of a performance he showed with the ball in his hands?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised by it just because like that was supposed to be part of our offense all year, right? Like that's the reason why we were excited to get Will Howard here, was because his ability to run the ball, which will help open up the run game. Now, obviously, 3 of those runs were where he got sacked. So he ran the ball like 9 times. But you saw late in the game when it came down to it and Ohio State needed to run the ball to win the game, they got Will Howard involved in the run game. And honestly, like I don't know if Penn State could have done anything to stop Ohio State on that last drive. I'm not sure. Like if we do that style of run game mixed in with the passing game that we currently have, I mean, this offense should be cooking going forward.
I want to get into the run game. I one of my buddies is a Penn State alum. I had to call him after the game, and I said, "Hey, and let me know if I'm off base in the chat." I said, "This feels like," and I don't want to be hyperbolic, this feels like the worst Penn State team that we've played in years. Most times when we play Penn State, it feels like we go into that matchup feeling like looking at the recruiting rankings, looking at the head coaching matchup, looking at the roster and saying on paper, the Buckeyes are a significantly better team. And this Penn State team constantly comes in and gives the Buckeyes a battle. And while this game was close and it was a battle, it felt for the first time in years, it felt like in years past, the Buckeyes get on the field with Penn State and they're pretty evenly matched on the physicality front. And then we've played other teams, Georgia's, Michigan's, and it felt like there was a gap. It felt like the first time in a couple years the Buckeyes were the more physical team on the field noticeably with Penn State. And it felt like the Buckeyes, if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot, would have really dominated this Penn State team. Where are you with how physical the Buckeyes were able to play? And I feel like we're going to get to it in a minute when we talk about the offensive line, and I think that played a huge factor in it. But were you surprised by how physical the Buckeyes were in this game?
I mean, if I'm gonna surprised, I don't necessarily think I was surprised, but I mean, looking at how physical they played, that's kind of what we've been looking for, right? Especially since, I mean, you look back to the Oregon game, dude. I don't think that Ohio State was not physical in the Oregon game. No. I'm also someone who's never subscribed to the Ohio State's not physical narrative that's been going around. Now, I will say that they did a lot of things differently in this game that are going to help change that narrative. And that's like running the quarterback. Obviously, you're equating numbers. Your run game is going to be more successful. People are going to equate that to being physical. Also, they did a good job of stopping the run. So, I mean, when you do those two things, you're automatically going to be considered a more physical team. And then I do give a lot of the credit for changing that narrative, just because I feel like our defense has kind of been flying around, man. They've been playing fast. They've been out there, kind of smacking dudes. So, yeah, like I said, never really subscribed to that narrative, but it was great to see what they did in this game in terms of the run game and just kind of the defense flying around.
when you talk about the run game, you see Quinshawn Judkins at 14 carries, 95 yards for 6.8 yards per carry. Travion Henderson, 10 carries, 54 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. The Buckeyes were at right around 2.5 yards per carry last week. I asked the question during the week, what do you think is the cause of the Buckeyes struggles running the ball? Do you think it's more about play calling or more about the offensive line? Which one do you think, when you saw the Buckeyes get back on track, what do you think contributed to that more? The Buckeyes seeming more sound on the offensive line, the play calling, or a combination of both of those things?
Yes, obviously it's a combination of both. But I was on this very show last week, Ron. I told you that I think the issue was more the play calling against Nebraska. I feel like they just did a very basic running game plan. Didn't really mix it up. Didn't really confuse Nebraska at all. And then, I mean, maybe some of that was kind of gamesmanship for this game because Chip Kelly was in his bag, dude. When you talk about in the run game and the pass game, Chip was mixing it up so much. I mean, there was the speed option that we didn't really see all year that seemed to be like Penn State had no answer for it at all. Running those like pitches off the edge to the same side where the back is at, just mixing all those things in. It just keeps the defense on their heels. And I don't know if no one has like came out and said this, but I think that Ohio State like really buckled down in the last week or two, and I think they've really been focusing on like their combo blocking. If you go back and watch that game, a lot of the time they were getting to the second level with their blocks. They would kind of double team the tackle and get to the second level, which wasn't happening too often before. But I mean, if you look back at Urban Meyer's football teams, that was the things that they were really good at. You know what I mean? So it's almost like Ryan Day took Urban Meyer's advice. Obviously, Chip Kelly is familiar with Urban Meyer too. So when Urban Meyer's coming out talking about this is what you should be, what kind of plays you should be calling in this big game, that's almost calling out Chip Kelly more than it's calling out Ryan Day, because Chip Kelly's calling plays now. You know, a lot of people looked at that as him talking to Ryan Day, but like I said, Chip's familiar with Urban too. So
absolutely there. When we brought up the offensive line a little bit, but I really wanted to dive into it. Man, I always say on this platform, I'm quick to criticize, but I'm also quick to let you know when I'm wrong and give people flowers when deserved. And I've waffled back and forth all season on this guy as far as hot seat. I said I'm constantly standing with one hand on the propane tank, cranking up the heat, and then in the other hand, I have a fire extinguisher because I'm constantly heating up Justin Fry's seat, and then I feel like I'm constantly rushing in to put out the fire. And I've said all season that he's had the opportunity to show his development and put to bed some of the concerns when it comes to the Buckeyes recruiting if he's able to weather these storms on the offensive line as far as injuries. And he handled it well, getting us through the first couple of games without Donovan Jackson. And boy, did it look spooky when Josh Simmons went down at left tackle. But it seems like the Buckeyes have weathered the storm and found their right five. You saw Zen Michalski get to start last week at left tackle and then end up getting hurt, and it made the Buckeyes scramble this offensive line. You heard the beat during the Ryan Day press conferences after leading into Nebraska, after Nebraska asking, hey, in the most polite way, essentially saying, hey, are you guys sure? You always talk about the best five playing on the offensive line, and we cover this team for a living. I know you get paid $10 million a year to coach this team, but I'm not sure Zen's in your top five available offensive linemen right now. Have you considered maybe putting your All-American guard at left tackle? And you see the Buckeyes do just that. And a guy that people have put out an Amber Alert for in Carson Hinsman comes in and saves the day. The Buckeyes lose an offensive lineman, and everybody's looking around like, where are the Buckeyes going to find a Power 5 starting caliber offensive lineman? We had one of those around here, and he said something on a podcast that made the head coach mad, and we haven't seen him since. Is there any chance he can be forgiven and allowed to play for the Buckeyes again? And shouts out to Carson Hinsman. We had some doubters. I got to give Goj his credit. He said in the chat, I'm not so sure about all the people that were saying Carson Hinsman had bad tape. I think that's overstated. A couple people in the chat were like, I don't know how good Carson's been this year. I think that's why he's not playing. And what do you know? He gets on the field and performs. This offensive line comes together for a performance that the Buckeyes absolutely needed in a top 5 matchup. How would you grade this offensive line performance, Terry?
I would grade the offensive line probably, if I'm putting an actual grade on it, I would probably give it like a B. I think they played great. They came together. Obviously, they gave up a couple sacks and stuff, but I mean, Penn State's got Abdul Carter. They're a very aggressive defense, so you got to just kind of give credit where it's due there. But back to Carson Hinsman, dude. I felt like last year Carson Hinsman was 1 year away from being a very good player. And then obviously he went on the podcast, he got banished, and Ryan Day had to go beg and ask him like, hey man, I know you've been in trouble forever, but we kind of need you now. And listen, he was what's the offseason award, Ron, for
Iron Buckeye.
The Mick Award, Iron Buckeye. He was the Iron Buckeye. Obviously, whenever he got in trouble, put his head down, he worked. He didn't try to hit the transfer portal. I was excited about him playing this week. I think I talked about it with you guys on here last week, because one thing that I felt like Carson would bring was like an attitude to the offensive line, which he had that last year. You go back and watch last year, if they had a big time run play or something, Carson Hinsman would be out there pumping his fist, screaming, getting all jacked up. And I think that he brought some of that attitude and that nastiness to the line. And then listen, man, you can't overstate how awesome it was what Donovan Jackson did. Moving out to left tackle for the first time in his entire college career, and then going against Abdul Carter, who, listen, I didn't even give Abdul Carter enough credit when I was on here talking about him last week. He looks like he's a freak, dude. Abdul Carter's a freak. And he was giving Donnie Jackson problems, even on some of the plays where he didn't get sacks. Like, he was giving him some problems. However, I don't think that another team – I don't think that a team has an Abdul Carter that we're going to face. And if they do, Ohio State had a plan to defeat that. You know, Abdul Carter is one of those guys who they're super aggressive with. So Chip Kelly schemed it up to where if he got upfield, then okay, that's fine. We'll just run right through here, this little crease, and we're out the gate. So I don't know, man. I'm excited about this offensive line going forward. And I heard you say, I think on like a post-game show, that we should be able to run the ball. We got 5 guards on the field, and listen, if that's what we got to be, then that's what we got to be. Look, real quick, one more thing. Look back at Michigan the last couple years, right? Their offensive line's been dominant, all this stuff. How many guys do they have from those last few offensive lines that are starting in the NFL at tackle right now? I would imagine probably not many. Most of them were guard bodies, future guard players, and they ran the ball with them. And I think that's what we're going to have to do for the rest of this year.
Absolutely. I feel like the Buckeyes have come together and kind of figured it out at the offensive line. Where are you at with Justin Fry? Is this performance enough for you to turn down the heat and maybe potentially throw some water on what felt like a smoldering seat coming into this game after the performance that we saw from Zen?
Yeah, for me, dude, I never felt like his seat was hot. I think that because of the recruiting, there's something there, you know, obviously that has to pick up. But before Simmons got hurt, dude, Ohio State had arguably the best offensive line in college football. Maybe top 3 if you want to look at like Texas. But I mean, their offensive line also went and played against Georgia and looked like terrible. And I've never seen Ohio State's O-line look terrible against like in a big time matchup like that. You know what I mean? So I never really felt like his seat was too hot, just because, like, I get it. He's not recruiting guys at the clip that you want him to, but he's bringing in guys in the portal who are looking really good. You know, Seth McLaughlin and Josh Simmons are 2 of the best offensive linemen in the country at this point. You know, they Seth at center and Simmons at left tackle. So I don't know, man. I don't think that his seat is hot unless like a catastrophe happens, which we've already avoided the catastrophe, I feel like, and he had a plan and his plan worked out. I feel like you just got to give the guy credit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You have to give him credit where credit's due. I said, if I'm going to get on here and constantly criticize him when he messes up, you definitely have to give him his credit where credit is due. And I think he absolutely earned that. And I would not be opposed to seeing him here another year, because I like while I think his recruiting class this year is small, I do like the guys that he got. I think that the 2023 class, the 2024 class has a lot of Ohio kids. And it's the class. It has what everybody's been begging for. Hey, if you're not going to go out and get everybody, go get all the kids in Ohio. And he did that last year. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. The offensive line seems to be coming together. Terry, you know how I feel about SFE. And to see the type of performance that they were able to put together this past weekend, man, was it electric. Our guy BI finally gets on the board this season with a touchdown. You see Jeremiah Smith break Chris Carter's his true freshman receiving record in what? 8 games. So for him to be able to break those records, Brandon Ennis get on the board, Carnell Tate looking like an absolute baller. I saw a graphic that was talking about the depth at Ohio State, and it showed 4 people on it, and it was Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, and Mylan Graham. And they said the Buckeyes are absolutely stacked at the wide receiver position because all of these guys will be back next year. I mean, what do all 4 of those guys have in common? They're all SFE receivers. And it feels like the takeover is starting earlier than ever. Emeka Egbuka is still on pace to break the all-time receiving record at Ohio State in receiving yards. But it feels like the next era is here with these SFE receivers. And Brandon Ennis is now knocking on the door to get into the party.
Yeah, man, I couldn't wait for him to get involved, honestly, all year. I felt like Brandon Ennis was going to be like a pseudo starter this year coming into the season, in the sense that I felt like he would be rotating with Emeka. Maybe they would flip Emeka outside and get BI out there some. And honestly, they have played him, and they have played him in big moments all year. He just hasn't really got the ball, which is like, I mean, it kind of looks bad, like, oh, BI is not really playing, but he has been out there and he's, made some key blocks and stuff like that. So I just think that his time was due, dude. And he seems like a type of like leader and energy guy that this team needs. We need as many of those as we can get, obviously. So hopefully they'll continue getting him involved in the game plan. I saw a lot of people commenting about like how fast he looked out there, but listen, I remember watching JSN, and I remember thinking every time I watch JSN run, I'm like, this dude is slow, but nobody ever catches him. And I think that might be kind of how BI looks. I think he's just a thick-built dude who is, like I said, he may not look like he's moving super fast, but.
And I'm gonna piggyback off that. I saw this all over my timeline. BI looks kind of slow. Anyone touch him on that play?
Nope.
Everybody,
the guy, he outran the angles to the end zone.
Brandon Ennis was moving so slow. Then why didn't he get tackled?
And he caught the ball like 20 yards away from the end zone. It's not like he caught it running in.
Exactly. Like he's not slow. And here's the thing that Chris Drew and I always talk about with Brandon Ennis when people want to say he's slow. Well, number one, he has a small stride. He's not a very tall receiver. It's not like he has short steps. So it takes him a few more steps than most people. So it might look like he's not moving as fast, but his feet are fucking flying. And the other thing is he's from South Florida. Go watch the tape. There are plenty of kids in South Florida that are fast as all hell that are never going to play football again in their life after they play high school football. Brandon Ennis, go watch his highlights. He's not getting caught from behind. So this idea that Brandon Ennis is slow, go find me the footage of Brandon Ennis, this slow receiver, getting caught from behind. Say what you want about the speed. He doesn't get caught. And same on that play. He's so slow, but didn't even get touched. So, I mean, I get if everybody wants to have this narrative, he seemed to find ways to get open. So, I mean, I guess give me that slow receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, too, that just had 180 yards and 2 touchdowns in the NFL this past weekend. It seems so perfect that both of these guys kind of have their little coming out in the same week. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 180 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns this past week. Brandon Ennis gets involved in the action this week with 2 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. And I hope it's an indication of things to come with his involvement in this offense.
Hey, he was the second leading receiver on the team, dude. I mean, and his other catch that he had was actually a huge catch too. It was in a big time moment. I think it was like a key third down, if I remember right, maybe second down, whatever. But he picked up a big time first down in a moment that we needed it. So keep getting him involved in the game plan, dude. Ryan Day has already shown that he can use a player as like a gadget player. And I know that that's not what BI's future is going to be, but maybe this year that's what he needs to be because Emeka is still here and he's not going to get that full-time slot role. But keep using him, dude, because if you're going to create matchup nightmares, man, get him out there. I don't care if people call him slow all year long. If he just goes out there and makes plays, it don't matter to me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like I saw immediately after the touchdown, someone said that he ran it in 0.25 speed. And I'm like, I don't care, bro. We get points based off of him getting in the end zone, not a damn radar gun. Like he got in the end zone, and that's all I care about. I think that the speed is completely overstated, and I think he's going to surprise some people. Like I said, and who cares? What I always say about Brandon Inniss, put him in a phone booth with anybody. Someone couldn't tag him. He's so shifty. So I think that elusiveness, and we've seen the speed in South Florida, so I have no concerns there. I think it is an overstated narrative there. Before we switch to the other side of the ball, I had a tweet during the game, and I listed 3 things that had me excited about this game. And it was Quinshon Judkins talking shit to the other team, a Jelani Thurman catch, and a Brandon Inniss touchdown. It feels like Christmas is coming early as a Buckeye fan.
Hold on, Ron. I know we've been talking about most of the offense, but if we're talking about things that are exciting, man.
Oh, we're getting there, Terry. Don't jump the gun. We're getting there. We're getting there.
All right, let's stay with the offense. Go ahead.
Quinshon Judkins talking shit to the other team, a Jelani Thurman catch, a Brandon Inniss touchdown. It feels like the Christmas is coming early for Buckeye fans. What were your thoughts on Jelani Thurman's catch? It felt like he didn't expect the ball to even come to him because he's like, hey, don't throw me the ball.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it until I watched it back, but there was a defender like kind of in between him and the quarterback that Will Howard kind of layered it over. So I think maybe he didn't see the ball. I don't know, but dude, that's exciting. This is exciting. I want to see Jelani play more. I like that kid, and I'm glad he made the catch because it looked like I thought for a second there, watching the play happen, and you're like, okay, he's bobbling it, and there's a dude coming to hit him, and he's about to get hit, and the ball is just going to go flying. But luckily it didn't, man. He got it down, and then he was hard to tackle. They need to get him involved, dude, because I think people were struggling to even tackle him. Like, he had one guy draped on him, another dude comes and hits him, and he's still just gathering up more yards. So that was super exciting, man. I mean, that's the thing about this game. There was a lot of just exciting things that happened. Like you said, Quinshon Judkins getting like the bulk of the carries and really kind of getting into a rhythm to where he's running for 20 yards. And then once he finally gets tackled, he's getting up and he's putting his face mask in the face of the other team. It's just like, that's the type of stuff that we need. And we got our guys who bring juice to the team, and we got them the ball. I think Jelani, I think BI, I think QJ, those are all guys who are going to bring juice to your offense. So I love seeing them get involved. Go ahead.
I wanted to pivot to the other side of the ball. You talked about a great catch. I think the best catch of the day may have been on the defensive side of the ball. I'm looking at Ohio State PFF grades. Terry, one guess who is the highest grade Ohio State defender?
I already know, dude. I already know. This is Davison Igbinosun. I've been trying to tell people about Iggy. They don't want to listen. Listen, I said I think Iggy was the best corner on this team coming into this year. And I meant no disrespect to anybody else on this team, but that's how I felt about it.
The only person you need to apologize to with that comment is Jermaine Matthews.
Okay, all right. Now, if Jermaine played enough, he probably would be the best corner on the team. I'll give him that. But if I told you before the season that at this point in the year that Davison Igbinosun would be leading the team in interceptions, now he's tied, I think, with Denzel Burke, if I'm not mistaken, or Jordan Hancock, maybe 2. I'm not sure, but I know that nobody has more than 2, and Iggy has 2. If I would have told you that he would be leading the team in interceptions, what would you have said?
I wouldn't have believed you because it would have been hard for me to believe that the guy that has oven mitts on in practice because he can't stop grabbing people remembered how to catch the ball, because I doubt catching the ball is very easy in oven mitts either. When they talk about him wearing oven mitts in practice, I'm like, oh, they're probably ain't throwing no interception over there. So to see him take the oven mitts off and get his hands on the ball was great to see. It felt like this defense was flying around. I have this phrase that I got to get trademarked. I've been saying it a ton on the show, is SEC tackling. And I feel like every time an SEC opponent plays someone outside the SEC or these newcomers to the SEC, they tackle them differently. Like they hit them like they disrespected them before the game. And it felt like the Buckeyes were tackling like that this weekend. What were some of your biggest takeaways outside of IGB on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh man, dude, I love this defense right now, Ron. Just the D line, they were out there getting after it. Excuse me. They were out there getting after it. I felt like the linebackers played a really good game. One thing with Jim Knowles' defense, dude, is when it seems like when he's playing, when he wants to be aggressive, kind of how we have been since like he kind of got cooked after the Oregon game for not showing any aggression at all. And I feel like that resonated with Ryan Day and with Jim Knowles. It seems like linebacker at Ohio State is a really good thing to play when they're being aggressive. You got like Cody Simon. I made a joke that he's like like Tommy Eichenberg, but a better athlete. And if you think back to Tommy Eichenberg in, 2022, he had the phenomenal All-American season. Ohio State was playing super aggressive. And that's kind of what Cody Simon looks like now, man. He's became a playmaker now that they got him coming downhill and getting him in some good positions. So I'm loving this defense so far, dude.
Yeah, a couple of names that you didn't bring up that I feel definitely, I mean, we're going to get into a deeper dive into this performance tomorrow, but on the defensive side of the ball, before we move on, I had to say these two names, Ty Hamilton and Caden McDonald. A lot has been made about the struggles at defensive tackle. Caden McDonald, a guy that we felt like would be pushing into the two deep of the four-man rotation at defensive tackle this season. We've seen him float up and down the depth chart as far as where he performed. We've seen him have up and down performances. I think he played his best game against Penn State this past weekend. Ty Hamilton absolutely wrecking things on the interior. I think he had one of his best games. How big do you think it is for them to solidify this rotation and have guys that they're confident in? I mean, I saw Hero Canoe and Caden McDonald wrecking things in on the goal line. I mean, Caden McDonald seems to be a real weapon for the Buckeyes on the goal line. Your thoughts there on the interior of this defensive line?
Yeah, and honestly, Ron, if you could tell me that I could have one thing that can happen over these next couple games before we get into like Indiana, Michigan, and into the postseason. If you said, hey, Terry, you can have one thing, I would say shore up the defensive tackle depth. So I need to see those guys playing a lot over the next few games. Just for this game specifically, I think Hero Canoe and Caden McDonald made multiple plays in this game that were kind of like play of the game worthy type plays. I mean, Ohio State stopped Penn State on the goal line 2 times. Obviously, one was that Iggy interception. But the other one was just those guys in the middle, dude. And Tyleek was out. Tyleek was hurt during this drive, like the end of that drive. So it was Hero Canoe. It was Caden McDonald. And those guys came up in a big way, and they went out there and blew up the Penn State offensive line. And the one that you talked about the most, Caden McDonald, dude, there's a play out there, and I don't know if you've seen it, but somebody even screenshotted a picture where Penn State was like pulling an offensive lineman on that goal line play, and Caden McDonald blew the center up so far in the backfield that the offensive lineman couldn't even pull. He just had to stop. He didn't know what to do. He just went to go pull, and his center was right in front of him, and he's like, I don't know. So, I mean, those guys need to continue getting involved, and they need to continue getting better, because obviously both of them are big body guys who are very good at like goal line type plays. But I think both Caden McDonald and Hero Canoe need to get better at like your every down type of situations.
And we've seen that in years past with guys struggle at defensive tackle. I mean, it's funny. I felt like I had an old man moment, like a proud dad moment, because I like seeing Tyleik Williams out on the field and then watching Caden McDonald uh, start to figure it out and come together. Like, we watched Tyleik Williams go from that guy that wasn't in shape and people knew he had all of the talent but wasn't getting on the field. We saw him getting tired on the field at early points in his career, and now seeing him come into the fully formed senior that he is now, NFL prospect, and him finally figure it out and put it all together. And it feels like we're watching that process again with Caden McDonald. Not necessarily the same issues, but still just the growing pains of being a young player at a university with such high demands and expectations, and growing into that and seeing him take those steps forward and have those growing pains, but continue to progress and get better and then put together a performance like that was awesome to see. I'm sure we're going to get more into the defense later in the week, but there was one other thing that I wanted to get to before we get out of here. I start a couple comments because I feel like they all point towards something that was jumping off the screen and I have not seen in the Ryan Day era. Terry has to drop for a second. But when I looked at this game, our guy Goj said, yo, they were all talking shit. The camera just caught Q. It felt like this team had something to prove from a toughness perspective, from a shit talking perspective. The Buckeyes were absolutely feeling themselves this weekend, and the way that they carried themselves and the confidence that they had was throughout the entire game. You could see the confidence that the Buckeyes had. They were talking shit to the other team. Goj said Bennett Christian was talking cash shit. The fact that or maybe he's not talking about Bennett Christian, maybe he's talking about G Scott. I don't know if that is a I don't know if that is a
that's hilarious. The tight end Christian.
I don't know if he's talking about Bennett Christian. I don't know if he's talking about our pastor at tight end. I don't know who he's talking about there. But regardless, the fact that they were talking shit, I absolutely love it. And then the energy on the sidelines, I talked about the SEC tackling. It just felt like this team came out and played like the team that we expected all year, with the energy we expected to have. The Buckeyes feel like they have sometimes a tendency to have like a woe is me, hang their head type of mentality. And it felt like the Buckeyes came in there like, I will punch anyone in their fucking mouth and no one's going to do anything about it. And it felt like they're carrying themselves with that type of attitude. And then the best part about Saturday, if you haven't seen it, go find it. Brandon Innis's post-game live. It is 90 seconds of greatness. I got about 10 middle fingers, about 10 fuck Penn States. Jim Knowles was dancing in the locker room. Ryan Day was dancing. I know our guy Dog was like, hey, that was a great win, but keep that nigga off the dance floor. I don't want to see Ryan Day dancing. But it was the energy to see that this team is still united. To see, and we, the fan base every year, I mean, you can put the chart together. This is where you are on the Ohio State fan experience. Before the game, Fryer, Ryan Day. After the game, Penn State's overrated. I mean, it is a cycle. But to see every year that this team never lets the outside noise get to them and they stay together, and to see them come together after that victory, to see Chip Kelly. One of the most depressing things about last week was watching Chip Kelly in press conferences, because the one thing that I talked about all year with Chip Kelly was he looked so happy to be here. And it felt like last week after that Nebraska game in the press conferences, it was the first time that Chip Kelly had to experience the bullshit that Ryan Day has been enduring for years, of what it means to lead this team and the expectations that this university has. And to see Chip Kelly it almost felt like feel the weight of what was going on and realize like, hey, we're in the thick of the season. And to see him have that type of performance and then bring that energy, see that smile back, see this team united. All in all, it was great to see the energy from this team, the celebration, the coaching staff. I mean, we had the graphic of Larry Johnson and and Jim Knowles facing off, to see Jim Knowles in the middle of the dance circle, just seeing that this team is still together and that they were able to come together for such a huge victory with that type of energy gives me the confidence, because a lot of people were like, oh, last week you were so doom and gloom. Yes, because we weren't seeing these types of things from the team. And that was the frustration, because it's like, hey, we know you guys have the talent. And like I said going into this game, I am not, if the Buckeyes lose this game, I'm not blaming a single player. I don't care. There's too much talent on this team to not figure it out to get it done. And like everybody's like, oh, the players get paid. Well, you know who gets paid even more than the players? The damn coaches. And if they can't figure it out, they're getting the first layer of blame. And to see them be able to get this team ready to play in a top 5 matchup, handle the adversity, no one hanging their, I mean, in years past, a Will Howard interception would have sent a spiral of depression onto that sidelines, head hanging, Ryan Day, the sulking shoulders, all of that. And we didn't see any of that. This team stayed focused and got the win, and then celebrated like they knew they were the better team. It wasn't the, oh my God, I'm so thankful that we're a win. It was like, I told you we were going to come in here and beat their fucking ass, and we did it. And to see them have that energy in the locker room of, hey, this is our house. We come to Penn State and we put belt to ass, because that's what we do here. And I want to see that type of energy on the 3rd Saturday in November. And to see them have that type of energy makes me that much more excited for that matchup coming up.
Yeah, I want to see more energy for that game. Come on, man. Even more than what they showed today.
I want someone, if I could have one request before we get out of here, I need someone in the Woody, when Ryan Day is having a real good day, just pull him aside and be like, Coach, I want to show you something. And I want them to show him that video of Samaj Morgan calling him a bitch. Like, this dude out here has less receiving yards than Ohio State's number 4 or 5 wide receiver, and he's supposed to be the next coming at Michigan, and had the nerve to call Ryan Day, Marvin Harrison, and Kyle McCord a bitch after the game. I just hope Mr. -5 yards against Ohio State has that same energy this season. The Buckeyes come out and get a top 5 victory over the Nittany Lions, 20-13. Ryan Day reminds everyone why he is the Michael Jordan of James Franklin's, and gets the huge victory in Happy Valley. And this team looks to be rolling. Terry, let the people know where they could find you before we get out of here.
Yeah, at CFB_stop on Twitter. And then you can find me on the Fans Edge every single Wednesday with my guy Cleveland Mike on this platform here. So make sure y'all show up for that 7:30 Eastern time. Then catch me like once a week on this show here, the Buckeye Roast, with my guy Ron and Q. That's it, man. That's where you find me at.
Bet if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. It's 2_TES. You can find me here weekdays, Monday through Friday, for the Buckeye Roast here with my guy Q. And then, of course, Terry and a couple other special guests throughout the week. You can catch me weekdays in the Bleacher Report app for our weekly game previews, me and Chris Drew. You can catch me Saturdays on the Menace to Sports platform for the best damn pregame show. And then Sundays here for Buckeye BS. If you missed yesterday's episode, Cam and Mike did a great job. They had it booming. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out. And just a little teaser, we may have a return of a program that you guys loved last year, and we'll be making a return on a different platform. Dogs Film Room.
Oh, dude, that's elite content.
We'll be coming back very soon. If you are not in the Discord, make sure that you are in there. We have all kinds of film breakdowns. Dog's going to be chopping it up in the Discord in a more Spaces style format where you're able to watch the All 22 film. You'll be able to talk. There's a chat, all of that. So be sure to lock in the Discord if you want to watch some All 22 film with the guys. So be sure to lock in with us over there on Discord. We appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode of the Buckeye Roast. Terry, you know how this thing ends. It's always go Bucks, and of course, OH.
I-O.
Yeah.